And Formula One Philosophy is back for the Austrian Grand Prix recap. A lot happened this weekend, but Sean and I are going to have a nice little quickie with you guys this week and just get out some quick thoughts here. And we're going to do that because we think everybody loves a quickie. Sometimes a quickie is all the time you have. And with scheduling, with the kids, with work, all Sean and I have time for is a quickie. So we're going to just pop one out. And if you like what we have produced, you can leave a like and subscribe. What do you think of that, Sean?
I think everybody should do that.
No thoughts on the quickie?
That's all you.
Okay. Yeah. Anyways, before we get started, how you doing, Sean?
I'm all right. A little bitter, but, that's just me. How about you?
Life's fast-paced. It's coming at me quick. A lot happening this month. Maybe I'll let everybody in on what's going on in my life in one of the coming episodes when we have more time. Or a solo episode. I haven't done one of those this year.
It's probably for the best.
Mm-hmm. Thanks. All right.
Anytime.
Let's get right into it. Sean, what were your two good of the week for the Austrian Grand Prix?
Oh, too good. Let's see. That battle between the two McLarens, basically the entire race. That's one of them. I think that's probably some of the best racing that we've seen in years, realistically. And it was sustained. So I thought that was one of the highlights. If anybody has any complaints about that, they can go fuck themselves.
Well, I wouldn't say years, right? We had Japan this year. But what makes you think that this was the best racing in years?
The duration of it. It was, like I said, just about the entire race, those two were going at it. Yeah, they had some points where they weren't so close, but it was a strong performance from both those guys.
I'll give my thoughts on why they weren't. It wasn't so close at times later in the episode, towards the middle. But yeah, I completely agree. And there was a great battle all weekend, you could say. I think it was subdued by the Alpines getting their revenge on Oscar. I think you can agree to that.
Yeah.
Gasly qualifying, Franco in the race. They were trying to fuck Oscar over, according to him. So I thought that was pretty interesting, but I'm just joking, but it's still, obviously, Oscar lost a win, I think, because not just of that, but of other things I'll talk about later. But yeah, great racing. Is Norris back after that pole lap, in your mind?
No, not at all. I think this is a track that favors the way that he drives, which doesn't mean that it doesn't favor Oscar. But when Norris is on it, and this is a track that he can get on top of, his true colors come out. So I think this is what that is. I think this weekend coming up, we'll see Norris back to what we know him to be.
That's my gut inkling as well. There's a lot of pressure going into this weekend. He's not necessarily good at Silverstone. And you shouldn't ever let Austria define your season, because we've seen a lot of outliers at Austria in the past. And I think we saw two big outliers this weekend, which are my two goods, which were Sauber and Lawson. And before I get into that, I'll give you a chance to elaborate on the McLarens and say your second good, if you have any more thoughts on the McLarens.
No, not really. I don't think there's much that needs to be said there. Obviously, they had a 1-2, and they showed that it's possible to have two cars in close proximity to each other on a fast track with the drivers keeping it respectful and clean. I don't think we really saw anything in that race between the two of them that was over the edge or concerning, and we didn't need team orders. So to me, that's what a proper championship winning team looks like.
They're doing good. and they should be expected to do good with the best car. So yeah, we often overlook weekends like this and just say, yeah, this is what should have happened. But it was still, yeah, you're right, a championship level performance by them. I'm going to disagree with you later, though, later in the episode. I think there was some hanky panky with McLaren. But before we get to that, let's do your second good.
If we're only doing 2 and 2, then I got to give it to Bortoleto. Yes, there were a couple of DNFs, but realistically, those DNFs didn't affect the outcome of the race because they all happened early on. And it looks like Bortoleto got up there pretty much on merit. Where is he here?
8th.
4 points. So, yeah, 8th place. So that was impressive. He seems to have gotten on top of that car, or that car was geared around tracks like Austria, which is a little concerning because it's kind of a one-off track. But you got to give it to him. Not only did he score points, he scored more than just the fringe 1 point for 10th place. And usually I've said before, that car looks terrible, looks really soft, it looks really uncomfortable. But this weekend they seem to be on it. They seem to be giving it, both Hulkenberg and Bortoleto, and it paid off for them.
Yeah, that's one of my goods, so I'll just give my points here. I texted you that they had 2024 Haas vibes because they're on a roll. I'm going to change that, actually. I think it's more 2022 Haas because of what you just said about this being a one-off course. This is around the time where you saw Magnussen and Schumacher in 2022 get a couple of points runs. And I think it's something similar to that with Sauber. The difference is they seem to be trending in the right direction, whereas that Haas team started to fall off. This Sauber team seems like they could have a few more races like this. And kudos to Bortoleto and Hulkenberg, but more so Bortoleto because we talked about him last week. He was due. I think he was due for something like this, and this was a good track to come out of and get some points, break your duck, and have a decent battle with Alonso, which, unlike, say, Mick Schumacher, Bortoleto decided not to crash into him and get his first points and just get the monkey off his back instead of going for more. So I applaud Bortoleto for that. I applaud him very much for that. He didn't try and go for it too hard.
Yeah, exactly. And that's, like you said, it's him battling with Alonso really shows the type of driver he is, and that, either he wasn't going for it because he didn't want to risk it, or he knew how to play the margins, and that's what the car had, and he didn't try and overcook it. But either way, it shows that he's got real talent back there. He just needs a car that can actually perform from time to time.
Yeah, he has it the toughest out of all the rookies. So I think it makes this weekends like this that much better for him, and hopefully it gives him some momentum to maybe score 1 or 2 more point scoring weekends. And if he gets more, then he might be the talent that a lot of people think he is. Certainly not McLaren, but some people do.
Yep.
I imagine you're good too, like you had a good as well of being Lawson, so we might as well both talk about him here, just so you can have an extra good.
No, I didn't particularly want to talk about him, but
I'm gonna give him some props. It's a good-ish to me. It's a good adjacent because it wasn't necessarily pace that got him into the top 6, which is what he got. It was more just Racing Bulls finally having a strategy positive weekend that seemed to work in their favor, whereas before it seemed like
50%.
Because I was going to say, like, it's more Hadjar who drags them along with good strategy because he puts them in good positions, right? Before, whereas this is they got essentially pushed into a situation where they had to put Liam Long, otherwise he was going to be out in no man's land, and he rose to the occasion and did what he needed to do. And he needed a weekend like this, but like we've already talked about, I think it's going to be an outlier more than a trend, but we'll see. We'll give him props and see what happens. Why do you say 50%?
Because they screwed Hadjar on strategy. Like, they didn't qualify far apart from each other, right? They were within a few places of each other, I believe.
Yes.
Um, and then Hajar was all of a sudden just gone. And I can't recall exactly what his strategy was, but I do remember thinking I have a meme saved somewhere for this. But I didn't post it because they did pull off a decent strategy with Lawson. So it wouldn't have made sense. But that's why I say 50%, because if their strategy had been nailed on, both drivers would have been up there because they both did have pace. But Hajar got the shit end of the stick this weekend, and it shows.
He also said he had floor damage, which was costing him some pace, which is why he couldn't hold on towards the end.
Right.
But yeah, they did go for the more, I guess you could say, conservative strategy, where they could have been a little bit more aggressive with the Hajar as well, and probably got a big haul this weekend.
Yeah.
But yeah, do you have any other goods? We're flying through this. We should do this more often, but I'll give you one more good if you got another one.
Let me see here. Refresh my memory, Nick. What happened in this race?
The Ferraris,
Ferraris were
it's third and fourth.
Yeah, they're up there. Yeah. So that's I think that's something worth discussing because I messaged you after the race, or at least a couple of days after the race, with a question of how did Ferrari take second place? Everybody's complaining about Ferrari this year, and they've dropped the ball, and Lewis isn't worth the money they're paying him, and whatever, Fred Vasseur needs to go, whatever other nonsense they're putting out there. But they're in second place, not by a margin, it's by 1 point, but they're beating out a team that everybody else thought would be title contenders in Mercedes. So I don't know why people are so bent out of shape about Ferrari because, yeah, they've had some shitty performances, but they're doing what they need to do. I mean, I'm looking at it now, and basically Saudi Arabia and Miami to be the pivot between Ferrari and Mercedes, at least from a team standpoint when it comes to points. Mercedes was higher points early on. Then Saudi Arabia and Miami started to drop off, and Ferrari was low points early on, and then after Miami started to pick up decent, consistent points. So Ferrari seemed to be turning it around. That's, there's a bit of caution, let's say, on that statement. But I mean, like I said, they're doing what they need to do to be up there, which is more than can be said about Red Bull at the moment.
Well, that's what it is. They're in second because Red Bull is fumbling their season away slowly and painfully, and it's hard to watch.
Yep.
And Mercedes is just reality starting to set in. They can be good on some occasions, but for the most part, they're the fourth place team. Well, sorry, third now because Red Bull has decided to monopolize the low ground. If this was a battle, they entered the battle. Let's hit fourth place, lock onto that for some reason, and make an ass of ourselves. So that's why Ferrari's in second, because they came in this season. Remember, they had the best driver lineup. They were going to just score high points every race. They were going to get a lot of wins, complete with McLaren, and they lost this race by 33 seconds to Piastri.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not going to sit here and act like this is a successful season for the team that was supposed to be killing it, right? They can get a podium if Verstappen is out of the race.
But the question is, how do you measure success?
I understand what you're saying. They're ahead of where they were, or they're around where they were last year. Is this success constructors? Is success wins? Is success the best of the rest in this case?
Yeah, and we have a defined metric for it. We have a point system that awards prize money and trophies.
But if
right now, Ferrari is the second best.
But if your expectation was a clear first, or at least fighting for first, they're double the points behind McLaren.
It's fucking Ferrari. They were never going to be first.
They thought they were.
No, they said that they were. They knew damn well they weren't going to be. because then they wouldn't have the bullshit, or they wouldn't be able to blame somebody for their mistakes.
That might be the most brilliant thing ever said on this podcast. It kind of crystallized both of our arguments in one sentence. Everything we've been saying for years about this team, you just said in one sentence.
Right. Because it doesn't make sense, just like the fucking team.
They're all about the show, not the results.
Right.
And yeah. But that's what it is. Like I guess, yeah, you can say that's a positive. Yeah, if you what's the word? If you change the goalposts, yeah, they're having a successful season, but the goal was clearly something else. So sure, we can give it to them, but it's.
But who's changing the goalposts? Like, this is not second is the first loser. Second is a completely respectable place to be with a large amount of prize money to it. So yeah, they're double the points away from first place. But at this point, nobody can catch McLaren. You may as well give McLaren the trophy now.
It's getting to that point. Yeah, they could probably DNF 3 races. Now they could probably have 3 Rosberg and Hamiltons and still wrap this up pretty soon. Let's just wrap up.
I mean, there's.
Sorry, go on. Yeah, and there's.
No, I was just going to say there's no sign that that's going to happen.
That's a good point.
They are the only team. Yeah, they're the only team that hasn't scored 0 points on a weekend.
Wow. And this was Red Bull's first.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Let's just wrap up what you're saying about Ferrari with the wise words of Ricky Bobby. If you ain't first, you're last, Sean.
Spoken like a true Italian.
I didn't put McLaren in my good for one reason. I think this is going to be the only debate of this episode. Okay, Formula One philosophy. Sometimes philosophers have debates. So let's call this philosophers' rules between us. Okay, philosophers' rules means I speak, I make a point, and then you say something as a rebuttal. Okay, so I'll start by saying this. Oscar was kind of screwed out of pole by a yellow flag. I think he would have got it, in my opinion. And because of that, he started off on the back foot. But by lap 1, he was attacking Lando, getting within range of him, getting to the point where he was about to pass him. And then when it came to pit stop time, Lando wanted to come in first, Oscar come in second, and Lando had a slow pit stop. And instead of letting Oscar do what he wanted, which was clearly to pit, McLaren said, wouldn't you rather wait a couple laps, make it so that Lando could pass you in the pits, and then maybe you'll get him back later? You know, wouldn't you want to have that, Oscar? We're not favoring Lando. We're just trying to convince you to have something else that you really want. You don't really want to beat him by having a faster pit stop. You don't really want to be ahead of him after the first pit stop. So it's not a case of are they favoring Lando or Papaya Rules is complete bullshit. It's just a case of Oscar didn't know what he really wanted. Right, Sean?
Oh, Nick. Okay.
Well, Sean, sorry. Listen, I'm going to butt in there. I'm going to completely butt in there, and I'm just going to make another point that I think they still haven't really made the claim to Lando that the championship leader, Oscar, who was up 5-2 going into this race, was the one who should have been favored this race, you know, because Oscar was within passing distance of him. He could have had a quicker pit stop, got out ahead of Lando, and then they could have had a real battle to see who would actually win the race. You know, like Lando said last year in Hungary, if this was just another car, Oscar could have said this. He could have said, hey, if this was just another car, I could have came out ahead after the pit stop. You know? Sorry, I'm trying to be fair here. Philosopher rules. I'm trying to let you talk. I'm trying to be completely fair, Sean. I'm going to let you make your point. Okay? All right, what's your point, Sean?
Who benefits?
Sean, so I'm just going to butt in there. I'm going to completely butt in there, and I'm just going to say one more thing. We're being completely fair with philosopher rules here. Completely fair. I'm just going to get another point in. Okay? I'm just going to get one more point in. I'm going to be completely fair, I promise to you. And you're going to get this back. I promise. Towards the end of this episode, I'm going to give this back to you, okay? Just going to butt in and say that I think Oscar is just kind of being screwed with these pit selection choices. I think that he could be doing a lot more. He could be up more wins. They already screwed him in Australia. Wouldn't they want to just give him equal treatment? Wouldn't you want to let the championship leader run away with it? Do you really need to give this to Lando when he's clearly not going to win it all? Sorry, Sean. Sorry, I'm not being fair to you. There's philosopher rules. Philosopher rules, of course. Philosopher rules.
You done?
Did you get my point? To everybody listening, they're acting like they're trying to be fair to Oscar, but really they're just doing whatever they want to make Lando happy. That's my opinion of this. This is what I'm seeing. Why didn't they pit Oscar right away?
If this is what you were talking about, it's not working.
Okay, I was just trying to make the point of that, but yeah. Have at it.
I really don't have anything to add to that. That's your take on it. And I said it earlier, but clearly you weren't paying attention. Who benefits? Who benefits from McLaren playing that type of game, Nick?
Nobody. Orlando.
Right.
But
nobody. Nobody benefits from the team trying to pit one against the other in some backhanded, circus antics type way that you make it seem like, when all they have to do is just follow the strategy. Either they've pre-planned it or they're seeing something in the data that suggests that was the optimum strategy. You keep going on about, someone behind the scenes wants this to happen. Or maybe they're just playing the game and sometimes one guy comes out better than the other. Or sometimes somebody makes a mistake, right? Goes back to our favorite razor, Hanlon's razor. Don't attribute to malice that which can easily be attributed to stupidity. And I'm not saying that what they did was stupid. It's just you tend to attribute everything to some unknown conspiracy. And you can't connect those dots.
Can I connect one more dot?
You can connect all you want. But at this point, you're just drawing lines in the clouds.
This is what this show is all about, Sean. Karun Chandok said on the Sky Sports broadcast that, Lando's stop was long. He's not going to be happy if they pit Oscar. I don't know. I made a very...
Who the fuck's
Yeah, who the fuck
Who's
is...
Karun Chandok, though? I mean, we know who he is, clearly. But what the fuck does his opinion on Lando stopping too late in the box have to do with anything?
My conspiratorial brain would tell me he gets inside access to a lot of what the teams are saying and is drawing his own conclusions, which make me draw my own conclusions, which drive you insane. That is a string of dots. That is absolutely correct. The last two.
Oh, Nick.
Your silence can only incriminate you further, Sean.
Can it? Or can it just be me getting ready to leave?
It's probably both. Let's get on to the bad. Who are your two two bads of the week?
One's got to be Williams. Because after a strong start to the season, and just as we thought Sainz was getting on top of that car, they have a double DNF. Sainz didn't even get the formation lap in with what seemed like a pretty basic mechanical failure. And then Albon DNF'd again for a powertrain unit that is yet to be explained. So, yeah, I didn't even notice when he retired. I just realized partway through the race that he wasn't there anymore. So that's unfortunate. And they were in a good position in fifth place, firmly in the mid-pack this year. And they still have a margin on Racing Bulls. But this could be the tipping point for them. This could be the point at which they start to decline and everybody else starts to catch up. Because while they are, almost double the points to Haas, Austin, and Sauber, that deficit is much more achievable than the one between Ferrari and McLaren. All right, 25 points, that's a good weekend. That's a mediocre weekend, really,
Alpine did it.
in the constructors. Exactly.
Yeah, this is what, 3 DNFs in a row. They were also my bad too, so we'll just combine that here. They were also my bad. This is what, 3 in a row, right? Because I know they had a failure in Canada, and I think they had a failure in Spain as well with Sainz. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah. So they've had 1 point in the last three races.
When it could have and should have been a lot more.
Yes.
So we talked about this about the Franken-car of last year with Williams. They might be coming up on something like that, where they just have to keep piecing together this car because it keeps falling apart and they can barely
It
race.
won't be it won't be that bad because these DNFs were not crash related, right? Like if you have a legitimate problem with a PU or a gearbox, you can change it, and that's not a Franken car situation. Yeah, Albin had a couple of front wings that got damaged, but that's really not an issue. If that's the spec you like and you want, then you have to make new ones. That's fine. So it's not the same situation as last year where all this is crash damage. This is unreliability, unreliability,
On
unreliability. Um, which goes to what we were talking about with Mercedes and power units a few weeks back, where this regulation is coming to an end and next year they've got to get all new stuff in. So is this the kind of the bottom of the barrel for supply and quality coming out of Mercedes power units? Maybe. But why is it focused on Williams at the moment? And in saying that, I realize I've just given you enough rope to hang yourself on the conspiracy theory there, but I'll leave that as it is.
Joke's on you because I don't understand engineering. Loser.
Great.
We didn't even talk last week about how Albin, his bodywork just blew up in Canadian qualifying in the severe Canadian heat. I mean, yeah. What the hell was that?
What was it? Yeah, that was a good one. We saw that in testing with Haas as well.
Yeah,
Ollie Behrman lost part of his engine cover. That also seems to be a quality related thing. We saw something similar this, I believe it was this weekend, may have been last weekend. No, it wouldn't have been. Yes, it would have been Austria, sorry. In F2, where F2 or F3? Fuck. I should really pay attention when I watch this stuff. It was F3. One of the F3 drivers in qualifying had a loose engine cover, and it was finger trouble. One of the bolts that holds the engine cover down was missing. Right, he was able to make it back to the pits. So could have been something like that, where something was loose and it, caused a catastrophic failure, or it could be something like we saw in testing with Behrman, where there was a legitimate quality issue with that part, which then caused separation, delamination, and that's what you get. But that was a big one.
So the solution from that is to sign James Vowles to a 5-year extension.
It has nothing to do with James Vowles.
I know. I'm just. It's funny to me that this guy's getting an extension right in the middle of this. It's just, anyways. You had, I guess,
Yeah,
another.
but I mean, sorry.
I said you had another point you wanted to make, or
No, that's it. That's it for Williams, at least.
and I think with great pain, we say goodbye to Red Bull's 2025 title chances. For the drivers, the constructors was gone after, I think, week 3. But to the drivers' title, I will remember. Okay, anyways.
Please don't do that.
I was just trying to joke. It was fun while it lasted. And I've been sugarcoating it all year, but I think it's been pretty obvious for a while that Max was more than likely not going to win the title and definitely not going to win the 9 races I predicted he would this year. So with great pain, I officially closed the book on Red Bull winning the title. And they did it in spectacular fashion with Max getting hit on the first lap and Yuki. Anyway. What a shame.
Mm-hmm.
What a shame that they fumbled one of the greatest teams, one of the greatest seasons in 2023. They went from that to this, where they're happy with a win during an era that they should have dominated because Christian Horner wanted to fuck, I'm assuming, a 6. I'm assuming the girl was a 6. We haven't seen pictures of her, but if she's a 5 or lower, Christian Horner needs to be tarred and feathered in the public square of London.
This is not the discussion you want to be having, Nick.
I know I'm just making a joke like I do in a ridiculous fashion. But I'm just trying to make the point that I've never seen a team like this just fumble so badly. They should have dominated this era. No team in modern memory can I think of has messed up a regulation era like this. The only one
they didn't mess up the regulation era.
Well, they're not dominating it. You know what I mean? They
dominated the first couple of years.
But usually you go through the end of that. You know what I mean? Like Red Bull went through the end of the V8 era in 2010, 2014. Then Mercedes went all the way till the end of the turbo hybrid era. And now we're in the ground effect era.
We're still in the turbo hybrid era.
Or I guess, well, I was about to say the ground effect era we're in now. It was turbo hybrid and ground effect. Now we're in the ground effect era. And Red Bull should have gone to the end with it. And they didn't. And the only team I can think of that was kind of like this was Williams between 97 and 98, where they fell off. But Williams changed engines and changed drivers. And also McLaren, if I remember you made this brilliant point in one of our early episodes, that Newey came into McLaren and designed a car that was a minute ahead of everybody else's. And Williams was suddenly caught flat-footed, and Ferrari made a jump that year. That's not what happened with Red Bull here. No other team around him except McLaren. McLaren made kind of a jump, but the jump seems so big because I think Red Bull fell off. And this is spectacular, man.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, they've had a really shitty season. And it comes down to a team that seems to be in disarray. They've lost a lot of people, and you would think that a well-oiled machine will keep running even when you remove, what seems to be a couple of innocuous little bits. But you've made the comments of, what's happened to the pit stops, what's happened to this, what's happened to that. And if you look closely enough, you can find all the key people in the areas that affect those things that you've mentioned are now elsewhere.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Red Bull is a big team. You've got lots of people involved, and everybody has a job to do, and their job is, or their roles are critical. And you would think that if you take the guy out on top, whose job it is to put everything in place for those people, as long as those people know what they're doing, it should still run without them, right? Jonathan Wheatley, for example, he's not running the pit stops himself. He's got the team operating in a way where they know how to do this. But we've taken away Jonathan Wheatley and something's fallen apart. And it's not that their pit stops are terrible, but they're consistently worse than they have been. The communication within the team is worse. Some of the regulations and the way that decisions are made around incidents that happen on track are not as clear and concise as they used to be at Red Bull. And that's another Jonathan Wheatley thing, right? As sporting director, he knew what the rules were. He knew how to interpret it, and he knew how to get people pulling what they needed to prove their point. That's not the case anymore. You have Horner showing up with pictures to news conferences that don't actually prove the point that he's trying to make, right? That shit never used to happen. So there are clear reasons why Red Bull isn't there. And unfortunately, it does look like the team is self-destructing. The internal politics behind it and why, we'll probably never know until the documentary comes out in 10 years. But until then, we have to speculate, I guess.
Yeah, and that was brilliantly said, Sean. You dissected it really well, and I don't want to take anything away from McLaren. McLaren's doing a great job this year. I think you said it early on.
Absolutely.
And I want to just stipulate that. But yeah, it's just, I think we thought this year there was going to be some great battles between Red Bull, Ferrari, and McLaren. and Ferrari's just a lame duck, and Red Bull is just imploding, and that we're grasping at this we're hoping that Oscar and Lando keep having these great battles, because that's really all this season has left, unfortunately. And just to add to speculation, because I know you and I don't like to speculate, wink. Do you think there's anything to the Max to Mercedes rumors that are going around this week?
He is definitely talking to them. I have no doubt that that is true. Doesn't take an inside source to know that. Total Wolf has been very clear on this in the past in interviews, both for F1 and privately, that he wants Max. And of course, even if he has drivers on contract, he's going to talk to Max to see what it would take to get him in a Mercedes. So, absolutely, he is talking to Max. Is Max going to replace George next year? With the standings the way they are, no.
Yeah.
What we've heard about his contract is that he has to be lower than fourth place. And right now he's not. So I don't share your theory that Max will grenade his season to be able to leave. I think he's too competitive for that. But until he drops into fifth place, contractually there's no way out unless he wants to pay. And I'm sure the amount that he would have to pay is significant even for the salary that he has.
Yeah, I said, is Red Bull gonna? I didn't say would Max grenade his season. No, he would never do that. I said, would Red Bull want to get rid of Max? Because at this point, the cars have such a divide. You'd rather start rebuilding now than later. That's what I speculated. I don't know. I doubt that that's the case, but would you rather be an embarrassing fourth or last place, which is what they'd be right now? So I don't think they're going to give up on Max. And yeah, so I don't think Max. Yeah, I don't think Max will leave Red Bull. It makes no sense. Why not wait and see what 2026 brings? This year's a write-off. It happens. You had 4 seasons in a row that you won. See what happens in 2026, and then maybe you can leave if it's really that bad. It makes no sense for either party to sign Max, really.
No.
We've talked about it before.
If Max goes to Mercedes, it's going to be the same as Red Bull now. You're going to end up with a car that only Max can drive, and Kimi's going to kill himself trying to get on top of it. And I think he's talented, but he hasn't proven that he's got that same touch that Max has.
Not yet.
No, don't get me wrong. I think he can be a championship level driver and potentially a multiple champion, but the driving style is not there yet. Is not what Max is, and that's not a negative to Kimi. It's just that nobody can be Max's partner if this is the way it's going to go. If you want to make Max happy, he's got to be comfortable in the car, and if Max is comfortable in the car, nobody else is. So we're going to see this type of thing happen everywhere until we find a teammate for Max that is his clone, question mark.
Figuratively and potentially literally might be the only solution, is what you're saying.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. We talked about a couple weeks ago or a couple episodes ago, we can't design a robot. So, yeah.
Yeah, that fell flat, Nick.
I tried.
And failed.
Now you're just being mean.
That's me.
And on that note, I think we should wrap up this episode.
I do have one more thing to say.
Okay.
It's not good or bad, but I just have to get this in there because I thought it was fantastic. In light of the Ferrari conversation that we had and the fact that they're not doing poorly by the actual metric, Fred Vasseur was asked about the Italian media and all the shit that's been said about him leaving the team. And his comment was effectively, well, you've changed the team principle by bringing in Fred. We've changed the car, and it hasn't worked. So you've already changed 2 things and it hasn't worked. What's the next thing you can change? And the implication was you need to change the team. right? So it was basically him pushing back on the Italian media, like, well, basically go fuck yourself. They've already changed the team principle. It didn't work. We changed the car. It didn't work. There's something bigger. That's the problem here. So, but said in a very Fred Vasseur way. So I'm going to stick by him. He's not the problem. The team needs to unfuck itself, which frankly means that they probably shouldn't be Italian anymore. But we've talked about that
A million times. When Michael was there, it was basically a German and English operation. Just to had the Italian umbrella. Just make it seem like it's Italian. Yeah. Make it seem it's Italian, but let the Germans run things. If you look back at, I was in Greece this summer, and there was a lot of battles fought by Venetians, by Sicilians, by Lombards, by Bolognese, people like that. Like, there's a lot of battles that Italians won. I was like, really? I don't remember that part of history. But then you look at the general in charge, Oscar von Wimpelbottom. You know what I mean? Like, it was an Austrian or a Swiss.
Yeah. Yep.
That's the lesson that everyone should learn in history. If you want things to be done well in Italy, put a German or an Austrian in charge.
Yeah.
And on that note, we'll be back after Silverstone. We should probably talk a little bit about Yuki next week. We've been neglecting that conversation, and we'll save it. Hopefully he has a good Silverstone, but yeah.
We'll see. Silverstone's not a track that would suit a pointy car like that.
Yeah, it's going to be a long weekend for them.
Yeah.
All right. Sean, you enjoy your week, and we'll talk after the English or British Grand Prix.
All right. Sounds good.
Good night, everybody.
Night.